Hey all, welcome to episode 18 of Custom Card Reviews. In this episode, you'll never go in the water again, Bayonetta enters the world of duel monsters, and Umbral Horror tries to be not so horrible. Let's go. This submission is by Hagen. This is support for the shark archetype, so let's see what we are doing here. So lame. Alright, Gimmick Puppet Roaring Ocean Dragon. This card is always treated as a shark monster. If you control no monsters or all monsters you control are either water and or dark machine monsters, minimum 1. You can special summon this card from your hand, then you can special summon one level 8 water monster from your hand, deck, or grave in defense position, but it cannot activate its effects. This turn, also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except water and or dark machine monsters. Whew. Bit of a run on there. A water and or dark machine exceeds monster that has this card as material gains the following effect. Quick effect, you can detach one material from a monster on the field, then target one water and or dark machine exceeds monster in your grave, special summon that target. You can only use each effect of Gimmick Puppet Roaring Ocean Dragon once per turn. Next up, we have Spider Shark, a level 4 fish. If you control a face-up water monster except Spider Shark, you can special summon this card from your hand, but you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Exceeds monsters. If this card is normal or special summon, you can set one Torpedo Takedown from your deck or grave to your spell and trap zone during either player's turn. If this card is in your grave except during the turn it was sent there, you can banish this card, special summon one Shark and or full armored Exceeds monster that's banished or in your grave. You can only use each effect of Spider Shark once per turn. Then you can attach up to 2 water monsters from your grave to that monster as material. I kind of cut that weird there in the text. If this card you control would be used for the Exceed summon of a water monster, this card and the monsters used for its Exceed summon can be treated as level 3, 4, or 5 monsters. Splash Shark. If this card would be used for the Exceed summon of a water monster, it can be treated as a level 3 or 5 monster. You can only use each of the following effects of Splash Shark once per turn. If you control no monsters or you control a water monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. But while it is on the monster zone, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except Exceeds monsters. If water Exceeds monster is summoned using this card as material against the following effect. If this card is Exceed summoned, you can take one Splash normal trap from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the grave. And this is a level 4 fish as well as this next guy, Surfacing Furler Rapka. This card is always treated as a shark monster. If this card is in your hand or grave, you can detach one material from a water Exceeds monster you control, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. If this card is normal or special summon, you can target one level 3, 4, or 5 water monster in your grave except Surfacing Filler Rapka. Special summon it in defense position, but it cannot activate its effects this turn. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Exceeds monsters. You can only use each effect of Surfacing Filler Rapka once per turn. A water Exceeds monster with this card as material against the following effects once per turn. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can detach one Exceeds monster from a monster you control, negate the attack. Detach one Exceeds material from a monster you control, negate the attack, and if you do, all monsters your opponent currently controls lose 500 attack. Then we have Woven Shark, another level 4 fish. If an Exceeds monster is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summon, you can take one Spider Shark from your deck or grave and either add it to your hand or special summon it. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Exceeds monsters. You can only use each effect of Woven Shark once per turn. A Shark and or Lancer Exceeds monster with this card as material against the following effect once per turn. Quick effect, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls. That target loses 1,000 attack in defense. Now we have the Exceeds Full Armored Puppet Lancer, comprised of 2 level 8 water monsters. This card is always treated as a Gimmick Puppet card. While this card has material, other water Exceeds monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Full Armored Puppet Lancer once per turn. When your opponent would summon a monster, you could detach 2 materials from monsters you control, negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. If a card becomes equipped to a monster you control except during the damage step, you can attach one card your opponent controls or in the grave to this card as material. Number C37, Hope Woven Dragon, Leviathan Shark. Materials are 3 level 5 water monsters. Once per turn, you can also Exceed summon number C37 by using one face-up number 37 Hope Woven Dragon Spider Shark you control as material. Transfer its materials to this card. This card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects that also negate the effects of all monsters your opponent controls until the end of the damage step. Once per turn, quick effect, you can detach one Exceeds material from a monster you control. All monsters your opponent currently controls lose 1,500 attack and defense. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, you can detach one Exceeds material from this card, special summon one monster from your opponent's grave to your field, and if you do, it becomes a water monster, but it cannot attack this turn. You can only use this effect of number C37 once per turn. Alright, getting into the spells. Aqua Gate, a field spell. When this card is activated, you can add one level 3, 4, or 5 fish monster from your deck to your hand. Water exceeds monsters you control equipped with an equipped spell cannot be destroyed by card effects. Once per battle, when a player declares an attack, their opponent cannot negate that attack. Their opponent can negate that attack. Each player can only activate this effect once per turn, per turn up to the number of cards in their spell and trap zone. You can only activate one Aqua Gate per turn. Aqua Mirage, equip only to a water monster you control with a level. So it's an equipped spell during your main phase. If this card is equipped to a monster, you can special summon this card as a normal monster. Water, attack 0, defense 0 with the same level and type as the equipped monster. You can manage this card from your grave, then target 3 water exceeds monsters with different names in your grave, return them to the extra deck, and if you do, draw 1 card. You can only use this effect of Aqua Mirage once per turn. You can only activate 1 Aqua Mirage per turn. And then we have finally Poseidon Splash Wave. Target face-up card your opponent controls up to the number of rank 5 or higher exceeds monsters you control. Water exceeds monsters you control. Negate their effects until the end phase, and if you do, inflict 800 damage to your opponent for each of the cards. Then, if any monsters were targeted by this effect, they lose 800 attack. You can banish this card from your grave, then activate one of the following effects. Target one of your splash normal traps that's banished or in your grave, except Poseidon Splash Wave, and either add to your hand or return it to the grave. Target one exceeds monster treated as an equipped spell in your spell and trap zone. Target one exceeds monster treated as an equipped spell in your spell and trap zone. Special summon it. You can only use 1 Poseidon Splash Wave effect per turn, and only once that turn. Let's jump back up to the top. Alright, so generally speaking, that was a novel that I feel like I just read. And then, I started doing this thing where if anything, went above 170 words, then I wouldn't read it. Everything here was less than 180, so I read it, but that was a lot. So let's go through. I'm going to give the word count on each card as we go through, and then also provide the feedback for cards as needed. So Roaring Ocean Dragon, 143 words. Overall, it's solid. Has all the stuff I've been clamoring about, like a restriction on the monster summon from the deck. So all that's good. Only thing, we need to cut something here because it's too many words. Like I've mentioned before, I think if it's not a boss monster, and I wouldn't consider this the boss of the deck, I don't think it needs to be sniffing over 120 words. So I would definitely find something to cut here. The other thing I will say is you have here the hard ones per turn. You can only use each effect of Gimmick, Puppet, Roaring Ocean Dragon per turn. So this technically only has one effect, which is this. This effect is a gained effect for whatever it's attached to. So I don't think I've really seen any gained effects have a hard once per turn clause, because they're not usually something that necessitates it. At most, what you'll see is a soft once per turn, which you definitely should add here. So you would say once per turn quick effect, you can detach and then go on about the rest. Yeah, this hard once per turn won't apply to the gain effect. Spider Shark was 166 words. This was on the cusp. As you can see, it barely fit here. So I would, for this card, as we go through it, I would consider giving yourself the option to set Torpedo Takedown from your banishment instead of your grave, since Takedown has that powerful Banish Pot of Greed effect, so it can often end up in your banishment. And so instead of getting it back from your grave, getting it back from from either your deck or your banishment. The fourth effect, so I know I cut this kind of weird, but I'm still not sure how it's operating, because you split it up with the hard once per turn clause, and then you go on to say then you can attach up to 2 water monsters from your graveyard to that monster as material. So this should probably just be looped in with the rest of this effect, and then you say this part. Also, I think it maybe doesn't need to be 2, maybe 1. That's probably just something that needs to be tested. But then, yeah, my main recommendation, there's a lot of text here. It's like I said, 166 words, and it's a level 4 monster. So it's more words, even though the last monster was a level 7 or whatever it was. So like I said, shrink it down to 120 max. Level 4 monsters honestly should probably have 2 to 3 effects on typically. So your best bet would be to just nix one of these effects altogether to cut down things in chunks. Splash Shark, everything here is fine. Just another card that's over 120 words. This one's at 124, so it's not as egregious as a couple of the other ones here, but I would still recommend trying to find something to cut. Surfacing Friller Rapka, another fine card, but wordy. This one's at 164. So again, your best bet is to just fully cut one of these effects to cut down things in chunks. Woven Shark. This is a solid card. This is a 112 word, so I get that it's in that 120 range that I kind of try to cap things at, especially level 4 and lower monsters. So I'm not gonna spend too much time on this. I think it was fine overall. The Xyz monster. So ironically, your Xyz monster has the least amount of words thus far. This has 108. So in a good range for a boss monster. The summon negation needs to say quick effect. So when your opponent would summon a monster or some monsters, quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from a monster you control and then go about the rest of it. Otherwise, it's a solid card. Number C37, this is 175 words. So this is the one that I was really talking about, this on the borderline of ones that I skip. So I'm glad that I read it, just because it's like it's a card that builds on an existing card in that it overlays on top of the regular 37. I think all the effects here are solid. You just got to find something to cut. So to bring it down from where it's currently at 175. All right, so your spells were a bit more refreshing because this one's 81 words. This is the only one that is less than 100 words. So this is one of your anime adaptations, which is where that third effect comes from. So this is basically how it works in the anime. I think the extra effects here you added are fine and they're fair. So it's a strong feel spell for the deck. The Aqua Mirage is the other anime adaptation. This was right at 100 words. The second effect is the one that's adapted from the anime. Honestly, so the way it works in the anime is that it just uses the equip spell in the process of the Xyz summon. You kind of broke it out into 2 pieces where you special summon it, and then you can then go about your Xyz summon. I'm guessing you did that just so you could give it the stats needed to bring out any Xyz monster that requires having a water monster or a fish monster, or of course the same level, what have you. I think you could probably just reword this in a way that more aligns with the anime version. That'll help you out in the sense that you cut down on an extra special summon, so it gets around things that are blocking you from special summoning cards or avoiding things like Nibiru. And then also, in case you find yourself in a position where your monster zones are clogged up, then you wouldn't have to summon this. And all you would have to say is you can treat this as the same type, attribute, and level as the monster that it is equipped to, something like that. So you don't have to have that 2-step of summoning and then going into your Xyz. The extra effects here are otherwise pretty solid. The Trap, really good card here. I like this one a lot. This is 132 words, so getting into the wordiness again. Traps, I don't think any trap has gone past 120, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe you drop one of these bulleted effects. I'm sure there's also ways to clean things up. Like maybe you don't need like the second and third effect on the first effect where you inflict damage and they also lose 800 attack. So maybe you can just cut something there. But overall, I do like what this card is doing. All right, so going into the grading for the design, I give it a 7. First thing I'll say, of course, is the word count. Overall, your cards average 131 words, and the monsters specifically are 142. So that's just way too much. That aside, I think you did a good job on building on the archetype with effects that align with the existing playstyle, lowering cards' attacks and things like that, strengthening the deck in the direction while functioning with the existing shark card pool. So it's all well thought out there from that regard. And from a design standpoint, it's just the wordiness of it all. The creativity, I give an 8. I think you did a great job of adapting the anime and manga aspects into these cards and really building on the deck through that lens. One thing I would recommend, though, is to not use artwork from the archetype for your customs unless those cards are definitively outdated. And even then, I would recolor it, flip it, change it up in some way to avoid confusion. But a lot of these cards just recently came out and you're using their artwork, so I wouldn't recommend that just from so it's not confusing. Balance, I give it an 8. Nothing egregious here. This is a pretty expansive archetype that just got around to support, like I mentioned, less than a year ago. And then another card pretty recently, at the time I'm recording this, I'm sure it came after your submission came in. All that is to say, I'm not overly familiar with this deck and what, if any, abuse might be had here. I think the cards you have are strong, not OP. So really the balance comes back to the fact that every card does 4+ things, which in and of itself is not a balanced thing, and that can cause issues, so I'll leave the balance at an 8. So with a 788, that gives the deck an average score of 7.7. Thank you, Hagen, for your submission. The submission is by IceBeam. This is the Bewitched archetype. Came with some lore in the submission, so let's read it out. After overcoming Avalon's forest and its dangers, Cereza embarks on her journey to become the greatest Umbral witch. Now, braver than ever, she is ready to fight any foe that will block her way. Every other Yu-Gi-Oh deck. while nourishing her potential in the dark arts in the summoning of new tools or hopefully friends, the Infernal Demons. So this is going to be a ritual-based archetype. Let's jump in. Starting off with Infernal Summoner Cereza. If this card is summoned, you can reveal one fiend or ritual monster in your hand. Add one fiend ritual monster from your deck to your hand. Then you can place one Bewitched counter on a face-up card on the field. During the main phase quick effect, you can ritual summon one fiend ritual monster from your hand by tributing monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed its level. You can only use each effect of Cereza once per turn. Next, we have Fluffy Doll Cheshire. You can discard this card, add one Infernal Summoner Cereza or one Fiend Ritual monster from your deck to your hand. Quick effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, place one Bewitched counter on a face-up card on the field. You can only use each effect of Fluffy Doll Cheshire once per turn. Now we jump into the Ritual monsters, starting off with Infernal Demon Cheshire. You can ritual summon this card with Infernal Demon Seal, unaffected by the effects of cards, with a Bewitched counter. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles a monster with a Bewitched counter, banish that monster. During your end phase, you can banish this card from your grave, add one Fluffy Doll Cheshire from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Infernal Demon Cheshire once per turn. Now we got Infernal Demon Scolopendra. This is a level 3 ritual, as was the last one. You can ritual summon this card with Umbral Witch Seal, unaffected by the effects of cards, with a Bewitched counter. During the main phase quick effect, you can target one monster your opponent controls, place one Bewitched counter on it, and if you do, reduce its attack to 0 until the end of this turn. During your end phase, if this card is in your grave, you can add this card to your hand. You can only use one effect of Scolopendra per turn, and only once that turn. Now we got a level 6 ritual, Infernal Demon War Train Guon. Same summoning spell, also unaffected by the effects of cards with a Bewitched counter, also has that end phase return from grave to hand effect. And its unique effect is if this card is ritual summoned, you can special summon 2 Infernal Wagon tokens, Fiend type Fire, level 3, attack 900, defense 1200, then place up to 2 Bewitched counters on face-up cards on the field. You can only use one effect of the War Train Guon per turn and only once that turn. Infernal Demon Madama Butterfly, also level 6 ritual, same summoning spell, also unaffected by the effects of cards with a Bewitched counter, also bounces from end phase in the end phase from grave to hand. You can discard this card, add one Infernal Demon Seal from your deck or grave to your hand, then you can place one Bewitched counter on a face-up card on the field. You can only use one effect of Madama per turn and only once that turn. Infernal Demon Clock Tower, this is a level 9. You can ritual summon this card with Umbral Witch Seal, unaffected by the effects of cards with a Bewitched counter. During the end phase, add it from grave to hand. Quick effect, place one Bewitched counter on each face-up card on your opponent's field. You can only use one effect of the Clock Tower per turn and only once that turn. And then finally, another level 9 ritual, Infernal Demon Gamora. Same Umbra Witch Seal to summon it. Unaffected by the effects of cards with a Bewitched counter. During the end phase, if this card is in your grave, add it to your hand. Unique effect, if this card is ritual summoned, you can banish cards from your opponent's field or grave equal to the amount of Bewitched counters on the field. You can only use one effect of Gamora per turn and only once that turn. And now we got a Synchro, Infernal Summoner Bayonetta. This level is 6. Materials are Infernal Summoner Cereza plus one non-tuner monster, unaffected by the effects of cards with a Bewitched counter. Once per turn during the main phase quick effect, you can ritual summon one Fiend ritual monster from your hand by tributing monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed its level. When you ritual summon a monster, you can also treat one monster your opponent controls with a Bewitched counter as a level 3 monster and use it as a tribute. And then finally, we have the ritual summoning spell, Infernal Demon Seal. This card can be used to ritual summon any Infernal Demon ritual monster. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster you ritual summon. Also, for the rest of the turn, you can only special summon monsters from your extra deck while you control a ritual monster. If this card is in your grave, you can send one Infernal Demon monster from your hand or deck to the grave. Add this card to your hand. You can only use this effect of Infernal Demon Seal once per turn. Let's jump back up to the top. Starting off with some general feedback, my main feedback is going to be that I think overall your individual cards are all pretty good. It's just when they come together and I look at the deck holistically, I wonder if the deck is a bit bricky. Like, I'm not saying you're running 3 copies of each ritual, obviously you're not. I took a peek at the deck list, you provided, even ran some test hands, and the game plan just feels too static to me, where it's get your ritual spell, ritual monster, bring it out, and then try to do it again and again. And you might think, well, yeah, it's a ritual deck and that's how it should work. Yeah, that's true. I just think the deck needs some fallback options in case you're disrupted. But moreover, when I think about the gold standard of rituals, which is Necros, and I'm not saying this is a balanced archetype for its time, but the learning there is that if you have a slew of rituals, which in your case I think you had 7, they need to be able to do things outside of their on-field effect. So yours all, of course, shared the return to hand from grave end phase effect, and then one of them had a discard to search effect. But overall, it just feels monotonous and lacking options, especially if you can't reliably get those monsters into the grave, and more particularly onto your field. I think one of 2 things, or both things you could do to help this archetype out is some more in-hand effects on at least a couple more rituals, or just rounding out your support with some spells and traps and normal summonable monsters. And then a third thing instead of all giving them all that same graveyard bounce effect, kind of like your very first one, the graveyard effect was a bit different from the rest of them, maybe varying it up a bit as far as what exactly you retrieve. So that's my main takeaway here. Like I said, the individual cards are all pretty good. Like if we go down the list, Cereza and Cheshire, your main deck monsters were good. As far as the rituals go, all of them are all really solid from an individual card standpoint. The one that I just kind of stuck on a little bit was the Gamora. So my take here is that given that it's a counter-based deck, I would think that this card would banish the cards that actually have the counters on them, not just a number of cards equal to the number of counters on the field. I don't think it's overpowered per se. It just seems a bit out of step with the counter premise, but if you wanted to keep it like as is, I think it's totally fine. The synchro is good, and then the summoning spell. So personally, I think the recursive effect would also be based around the counters. Like, and I get the reason for having the send an Infernal Demon monster from your hand or deck to the grave, so then you can use those graveyard effects to fetch them back. This would also, and that effect is good. It would also help out if you had some more variety in those graveyard effects to really make use of an effect like this. But like I was saying when I started talking about this card, maybe something like remove a counter, or if there is a Bewitched counter or something. That's what I would have expected. Again, I don't think anything is wrong with this card. There's just a couple of things that stuck out to me. So going into the grading for the design, I give it a 7. I think your lineup of monsters is solid. It just needs to be rounded out with some more support to make the deck function. Even with other engines like incantations and all the ritual support that's out there, this deck really just comes down to search pieces, summon ritual, rinse and repeat. And I don't think there's enough interactions outside of that formula to help the deck stand its own if that basic recipe is interrupted. Creativity, I give it an 8. I like the vibe and the aesthetic of the deck. Not groundbreaking, but still cool. I'm not familiar with Bayonetta, but still appreciate the adaptation of another lore into Yu-Gi-Oh form. And then for the balance, I give it a 9. Not much to say here. Everything is well thought out and balanced. Like I said, none of the cards were OP. I think they all serve a function for the deck. It's just more about being able to do more. So with a 7, 8, 9, that gets the deck an average score of 8. Thank you, IceBeam, for your submission. This submission is by Greve. This is support for the Umbral Horror archetype. So the villain Vector from Zexal getting some much needed support. I find it so odd that Konami just refuses to take advantage of villain decks. Like, everybody loves villains, and yet here we are with Toons being uncompetitive. Bakura doesn't have a full-fledged deck. Darkness doesn't have anything. Sartorius just got some for Arcana Force. And then we, of course, have Umbral Horror, which is horrible. So let's see what we got to work with here. Starting off with Umbral Horror Zombie. If this card is special summoned by the effect of another Umbral Horror monster, its level is doubled. Once per turn, if this card is banished, select one monster controlled by your opponent. That monster's attack becomes equal to this card's current attack. Umbral Horror Jack. Once per turn, when an Umbral Horror monster is special summoned, you can add one copy of Umbral Horror Jack from your deck to your hand. If this card is used as an Xyz material for a number or Umbral Horror monster, you gain life points equal to the attack of the Xyz monster it is attached to as material. You can only use this effect of Umbral Horror Jack once per turn. Umbral Horror Gargoyle. Once per turn, if this card is special summoned, you can increase the level of up to 2 dark monsters you control by 3. If this card is destroyed while in defense position, you can special summon one Umbral Horror monster with 0 attack or defense from your hand or deck except Umbral Horror Gargoyle. Umbral Horror White. If this card is special summoned, you can declare a level from 1 to 8. This card becomes that level until the end phase. You can send one Umbral Horror monster from your deck to the grave. Special summon one Umbral Horror monster with 0 attack or defense from your grave. You can only use this effect of Umbral Horror White once per turn. Umbral Horror Cerberus. Once per turn, you can select one Umbral Horror card you control. That card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects until this card leaves the field. If this card is banished from your hand, you can choose one monster your opponent controls, destroy that monster. You can only use each effect of Umbral Horror Cerberus once per turn. Umbral Horror Master Puppet. This is an Xyz monster. Rank 2, takes 2 level 2 Umbral Horror monsters. Once per turn, you can detach 2 Xyz material from this card, target 2 Umbral Horror monsters in your grave and special summon them. When an Umbral Horror monster you control is destroyed and sent to the grave, you gain life points equal to the damage you took that turn. You can only use each effect of Umbral Horror Master Puppet once per turn. Umbral Horror or Overfiend Astaroth. This is a rank 4, 2 level 4 Umbral Horror monsters. This card is unaffected by spell and trap effects. Once per turn, you can detach one Xyz material from this card. This card gains 1400 attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. And now we jump into the spells. Happy Umbral Memories quick play spell. If an Umbral Horror monster you control is destroyed by battle while attacking an opponent's monster, you can special summon up to 2 Umbral Horror monsters from your deck. If this card is sent from your hand to the grave in number 104 Masquerade, number 39 Utopia, or number 66 Master Key Beetles in your grave, you can special summon that target in attack position. Then we have the field spell, Umbral Horror Swamp. Umbral Horror monsters you control cannot be destroyed as long as there are Umbral Horror monsters on the field with attack or defense greater than 1,000. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, you can select one monster on your opponent's side of the field. Its effects are negated. You can only use this effect of Umbral Horror Swamp once per turn. And then we have Reborn of the Umbral Horror. If an Umbral Horror monster you control is destroyed, special summon one Umbral Horror monster from your grave, you can only use the effect of Reborn of the Umbral Horror once per turn. Once per turn, you can discard this card, target one Umbral Horror card in your grave, and shuffle it into your deck. Now let's jump back up to the top. Starting off with some general points. Work on the PSCT. There weren't any colons or very few colons and semicolons, so it's hard to say whether you intended effects as activated or continuous or conditions. A lot of that is easy to gather just based on how effects read, but it'll certainly help to clear things up if the proper PSCT is used. The other thing I'll say is that by your form submission, you wanted to support this archetype, but I still feel like you're aiming for a weak power level, certainly by the standards of, I would even say, the last 15 years. So I would look into some more search power for the deck, as well as more synergy among cards. For example, the boss of this deck is a rank 5, but in your cards, only white can become a level 5, and then Gargoyle might be able to turn some level 2s into 5s. So more synergy will help out the deck so you can make moves no matter what hand you're starting with. Now going into the individual cards, the Umbral Horror Zombie. So I don't know if there are effects that alter the attack of the card while it's banished. Like, so you say here becomes equal to this card's current attack if it's been banished. So it's interesting to see that you specified current attack. Otherwise, the card is fine. The Jack, no problems there. Gargoyle. So it's a once per turn effect. You can ditch that if you meant it to activate when it's special summon. The reason for that is if it's a once per turn effect on summon, then anytime it leaves the field, that once per turn is called a soft once per turn if it's just listed as once per turn. That resets anytime it leaves the field. So every time you summon it, you're going to get it again and again. The other thing you may have been going for is that if it is once per turn, if you control this special summon monster, then you can get this effect. And that makes more sense as a soft once per turn. And then if you just wanted to nix the once per turn, you would just say, if this card is special summon, you can increase the level of up to 2 dark monsters you control by 3. And honestly, I don't think that would need a hard once per turn on it. I think that effect is pretty tame to just leave it at that. So whichever way you want to go about it, there's 3 ways to cut it. The token, I would say you need to put the stats of the token on there. So in addition to the attack and defense, like usually it comes in parentheses where you have the type, the attribute, the level, attack, and defense. So reference something like Scapegoat to see how levels of tokens are written out in token generating effects. White is solid. Cerberus, the target, the select should be say target. That's just proper wording, proper PSCT wording. This is a clever little effect though. It's like Cerberus is guarding the monster from being destroyed. So I like the tie-in of how Cerberus tends to work in mythology and how the effect works. And then same thing here. If this card is banished from your hand, you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy that monster. The Master Puppet. So targeting will come before the semicolon. So it says here, target 2 Umbral Horror monsters in your grave, and then you can change graveyard to GY. But yeah, this part would come before the semicolon, and then it would be semicolon, special summon them. Otherwise, the effect is good, and the second effect is also solid, as is Astaroth. No issues here. Memories. So this is a solid card, but it's basically Umbral Horror Unform as a spell. So I don't know if... I mean, it certainly helps. I just think you might want to vary the effect up instead of just adapting an existing monster into a spell form. On the second effect, instead of saying one of these in your grave, I would say target one of these in your grave. Target number 1, 104 Masquerade, number 39 Utopia, number 66 Master Beetle in your graveyard. Special summon, and then semicolon, special summon that target in attack position. The reason for that is because you say at the end, special summon that target in attack position, but you were never targeting something at the start of the effect. The Swamp, no issues here, it's fine. And then Reborn. So I think you can rework this in 2 ways. First, the first effect either needs to, if an Umbral Horror monster has been destroyed this turn, or make it a quick play so you can activate it at the time the monster is destroyed. So one or the other. But this kind of thing where you have a normal spell, you wouldn't be able to activate it at the time something is destroyed. I guess there are like a handful of cards out there that kind of break that ruling just based on how the card operates, but just to clear things up, I would either make this a quick play spell or make the condition if an Umbral Horror monster has been destroyed this turn. The second thing is to make the second effect a graveyard effect. So you banish it from the grave and then get this effect, and then shuffle back the Umbral Horror from grave to deck. And honestly, you can nix the discard unless you feel the discarding like helps to get monsters from your hand into the grave for any sort of reason, but otherwise I don't think you need to discard on this kind of effect if you're just shuffling things back from graveyard into the deck. So going into the grading, for the design, I give it a 5. I think you have a fair grasp of how the deck is intended to function. Some small things seem out of place, like how a lot of these main deck monsters have decent attack, though most Umbral Horror monsters are below 1,000, if not outright 0. And then, like I mentioned at the top, there doesn't seem to be a way to go into the boss of the archetype, so that feels like a missed opportunity. So I would clean some of those things up there. Creativity, I give it a 5. Some effects here are clever, like the Cerberus that I talked about. Most is pretty standard, with even one card just being the spell version of a monster that exists in the archetype. And then for the bounce, I give it a 7. This is another one of those where I feel like it's not doing enough. This archetype needs a lot of help, but despite 10 cards here, I don't think it's even in spitting distance of the stuff we've seen in the last 10-15 years. So, of course, nothing is broken, but it could use a more buff, so that's why I knocked down the balance. So with a 5.57, that gives us support an average score of 5.7. Thank you, Greve, for your submission.